Syracuse held the top spot in collegiate lacrosse for less than a week after a one-goal loss to Harvard, and today was a missed opportunity for the 6th-ranked Cuse to find itself against 7th-ranked Princeton. The Orange stood no chance in the first quarter and couldn't overcome the hump the rest of the way. We'll break it all down here on Orange Press Pass, which comes at you right now. Welcome into Orange Press Pass. Nico Horning, Kiran, Costa, Sydney Chan. Happy to be with you here after Syracuse drops another to Princeton. Guys, a one-goal loss to Harvard. You're sitting there thinking that Syracuse is like, all right, maybe they can get back on track the next week and part of their long road trip, and then they do that and they fall flat right off the bat, Kiran.
Yeah, Nico, and you know what I'm going to say? I'm going to say Syracuse never had a chance, and here's why. 2 minutes into the game, Sydney, we get a goal from Princeton, and they really just never looked back after that. Opened up a 6-0 cushion, outshot Syracuse by 10. They outshot them 15-5 in the first quarter. When you're just getting beat like that, you can never really get back in the game. And then, okay, maybe you regroup second half. Nope, they allow a goal pretty much off the face-off to start the second. Syracuse never really felt like they were in this game at all.
Yeah, Kiran, you said it. I would say that Syracuse really didn't have a shot from the get-go because this was really Princeton's revenge game. The Tigers hadn't beaten the Orange in 6 straight meetings, and after a 19-18 NCAA tournament heartbreak, Princeton came in with a lot of urgency. Gary Gate and his squad knew that, and still they let Princeton outshoot them by 12, win the ground ball game by 10, and put 7 more shots on goal. That just cannot happen.
And part of that, maybe uncomfortability for Syracuse after playing in the Dome, a pretty mediocre environment as far as the temperature is concerned. Then they go outside and they can't do much right off the bat with 40-degree weather. And the class of 1952 stadium is where Syracuse and Princeton took place for this one this afternoon. A sunny day overall, which is probably a good thing, but for Syracuse playing in definitely their coldest game of the year. And speaking of cold, Syracuse started off that way after Princeton got off on the right foot, and that's pretty much how the first quarter went down the rest of the way.
Yeah, I mean, I talked about it earlier, Nico. 5-0 and then 6-0. I mean, Syracuse had to get something going eventually.
First time Syracuse was scoreless in the first since last year at Duke, and it went on to be that way the rest of the second quarter. Then at the start of the second, or rather the first quarter, then the start of the second, they fell down 6-0 as well, and it didn't come until midway through the second quarter when Syracuse finally cashed in from deep. Luke Roa got the Cuse on the board with the man-up opportunity, and then here at the end of the first half, Peyton Anderson gave the Cuse a little bit of momentum heading into halftime.
Yeah, Syracuse ended up winning or scoring off of those man-up opportunities, 2 goals off of those, but then still Princeton really had the momentum, they had the energy of the home crowd, and Syracuse, as you could see right there, really could not win the face-off battle, and that ended up being a huge difference maker because there you go, Andrew McMeekin ended up scoring at least 2 or 3 times off the fast break right off the face-off.
And then Peyton Anderson, his second goal of the game later on in the third. Syracuse within 4. And right now you're thinking that, all right, it's now or never for Syracuse to get over that hump. But then Parker Reynolds says, not so fast with 10 minutes to go in the fourth quarter. Syracuse just could not get over the hump at all today throughout all of regulation.
Yeah, just not a pretty one. And you mentioned it earlier, maybe it's playing outside versus playing it inside, but there's no excuses for a game like that.
It was warm. 45 degrees and sunny, that's nothing for Syracuse.
Sure. For a team that plays inside the Dome. 11-7 the loss for Syracuse to Princeton. That's now 2 losses in a row on the 6-game road trip for Syracuse. Finn Thompson had a couple of goals, and so did Peyton Anderson. But you got to credit the way Princeton played overall today. And especially Ryan Croddick, the Princeton goaltender, was phenomenal.
Yeah, Ryan Croddick was outstanding. And one name you don't see on there is Joey Spallina. When was the last time he didn't make one of the top 2 stat guys in a game for Syracuse? What happened?
Yeah, he really was not finding his groove. And I think, again, a lot of credit goes to Princeton's defense because Syracuse really knew that Princeton's defense was going to come out to play. They don't really play super structured. They really adjust to their opponent, and Syracuse just couldn't outsmart that. Maybe it's the Ivies, maybe it's the Nerds, but Syracuse just could not outsmart Princeton's defense, and that became the difference.
The Ivy League opponents have not been great for Syracuse, and they've got another one in a couple of days. All right, well, we are joined now with our reporter from class of 1952 Stadium. What a title, by the way. Jake Klein is joining us live from Princeton, New Jersey. And Jake, with this Syracuse loss today, how much did that 5-0 hole that Syracuse dug itself into after the first quarter impact the way Syracuse fared the rest of the game?
Well, Nico, I think it impacted it majorly. Look, you never want to start down 1-0, let alone 5-0 or 6-0. Syracuse didn't score a goal until almost 25 minutes into this game. And look, from that point on, when it was 6-0, Syracuse outscored Princeton the rest of the way. When the sun went down and it started to settle in here at Class of 1952 Stadium, Syracuse played a lot better. But that 6-0 run to start the game was the difference in a game decided by 4. Absolutely.
Jake, Joey Spallina is one of the best players in the nation. He had 0 points today for the first time since 2024. What happened to Joey Spallina, and what did Princeton do so well defensively?
Well, it's a good question because it was a dud for Joey Spallina in another big game after he scored, remember, 8 points against Princeton, 4 goals, 4 assists in that quarterfinal game these two teams played last year. So, look, I think, one, you got to give a lot of credit to Princeton's defense. Gary Gates said it. Matt Madelon, the Princeton head coach, said it. They had to be aggressive, and they were uber aggressive. They slid very early, and then the one-on-one matchup between Spallina and Jack Stahl was pretty much just dominated all day by 28 and White. So it's a little bit of head-to-head stuff. Princeton tried to take Spallina out of positions where he had the ball and had the opportunity to make plays. Only took 3 shots for the game. Overall, I think Princeton's aggressive team defense was the main reason Spallina had no points in this game, but also the one-on-one matchup with Stahl was certainly a factor. He played well.
Hey, Jake, good to see you. Last week and this entire week, the emphasis was on execution under pressure, but obviously today things fell through. Did you see some of the same issues versus Harvard last weekend show up today as well?
Sydney, I got to be honest with you. I don't think there was a lot of situations where Syracuse cracked under pressure in this game. Before there was ever any pressure on them, they were down 4-5, 6-0. So, yeah, there were a lot of mistakes. There was a lot of sloppy play. The sun was an issue in this game. Riley Figueres was down on the field yelling at his teammates, "I can't see anything." So that certainly impacted the game. Syracuse was very sloppy. I mean, elementary mistakes, really without any pressure from Princeton. Unforced errors, dropped passes. Jimmy McCool at one point early in the game thought he caught a pass and just didn't catch the ball, started running away as if he had the ball, didn't. That almost cost Syracuse a goal. They gave up a goal on a really bad mistake by Ryder Ochoa, who dropped a pass on a free clear, and that turned into a Princeton goal. So I don't know that it was Princeton pressure that made the difference as much as it was Syracuse's unforced errors.
Loss to Harvard, a loss to Princeton, and we'll see if Syracuse can rebound against Penn on Sunday. Jake Klein from Princeton, New Jersey, thanks so much for joining us. And that's not all. We got more coming up here on Orange Press Pass, some scores around the NCAA, and we'll dive a little bit deeper onto this loss to Princeton. Don't go anywhere. More coming up. Welcome back to Orange Press Pass. Syracuse drops another, this time to Princeton in New Jersey. Nico Horning, Kiran Costa, and Sydney Chan, happy to be with you. And Syracuse and Princeton, not the only game going on today. There were some other games going on around the country. And Ohio State, Georgetown, they'll play tomorrow. As far as some of the totals or finals today, Binghamton and Mercyhurst. Binghamton won that one by 6. And then UMBC Towson, pretty close, tied up at 6 in the third quarter.
Yeah, a close one still going on now. But Nico, let's really look at two of these games. Georgetown and Denver, 2 games on the schedule coming up for Syracuse. I mean, maybe scouting-wise, take a look at this if you're an Orange fan, but those are really the 2 we need to be looking out for.
Yeah, I'm really curious about that Ohio State-Georgetown team because, again, looking ahead at Syracuse's schedule, which we'll dive into more later on in the show, Georgetown is Syracuse's first home game in 6 games. It's the longest away stretch that Syracuse has had since 1972. We'll see how Syracuse fares against Georgetown back home in the Dome after just traveling so much.
Yeah, and Denver, that's another one. Outside game, those have not been going very well recently.
Number 3, Richmond. Number 5, Cornell. That should be a fun one with 2 undefeated teams. Syracuse, Princeton in the ACC Ivy Challenge today. And speaking of the ACC, some other scores going on. Look at North Carolina and Penn coming down to it, but UNC escaped with a 2-goal win.
Yeah, at least Penn's not going into the Syracuse game with any momentum.
Right.
We definitely know that the Orange aren't. I mean, I guess it's good to see your next opponent coming off a loss rather than a win. But I mean, a lot of good ones. Notre Dame, Maryland, that should be fun.
I mean, it's hard to tell, to be honest, because it seems like all of these other teams that are playing Syracuse play with revenge on their mind. So who knows? Maybe Penn does have revenge on their mind. I don't necessarily see how Syracuse is going to be in this better mentality heading into this weekend after going off of 2 losses and this last one, a very deep loss.
Syracuse, one of 6 teams that'll be facing 3 Ivy teams this year, and the third one will be Penn on Sunday. As far as this one goes, Syracuse and Princeton, the Tigers, 8 different goal scorers. They were spreading the wealth all game long, and I think that's a big reason why the offense was clicking from the start for Princeton.
Yeah, 100%, Nico. And you know why that is, Sydney? It's because they're so deep.
Absolutely.
Every single player on the field can score a goal, and that's exactly what happened in the early going. We say it was 8 different goal scorers. Well, there was 6 out of the first 6 was everybody knew, and that jumped out to a 6-0 lead. What are you going to do?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Gary Gate and his squad, again, in Media Ops this week, we're talking about how deep this Princeton offense is. We knew that Princeton's offense is, quite frankly, nasty. They knew what they were doing, and if you're comparing this game to the last game, the 19-18 Syracuse win in the NCAA tournament, Princeton is returning nearly all of its roster except for its leading scorer, Colter McCassie. So they really had that momentum going. These players have played together for so long, and one of those players is Nate Kabiri, who's leading Princeton in total career points right now. Ended up getting over 123, 124 in this one, and was really generating that offense. And then you have just an accolade of other people as well down on that full screen.
Yeah, every single name on that list can score and did score. And one point that I really like that you mentioned was Syracuse knew this was coming.
They did.
That's the problem. They had a game plan and could not execute it. Princeton had everybody score. Princeton had a game plan, stopped Joey Spallina, and they did it very, very well. But, I mean, maybe Syracuse needs more players that can score. Maybe is that the problem? Well,
the offense could be the problem, but again, we talked about the Princeton goaltending being really good today, but also the face-off department was a bit of an issue early on. We talked in the first and second quarters about if John Mullen was a bit of an issue for Syracuse, and that continued the rest of the way. It wasn't just a first-half fluke.
I don't think so. And we knew that, face-offs are a big part of any lacrosse game, but especially this one when both defenses and both offenses are very, very strong. But going into this one, we thought Syracuse may have had a little bit of an edge in the face-off battle. Princeton was coming in at under 40%, and Syracuse's head Fogo was coming in at over 60%. So by the numbers, you would think that John Mullen would really have an edge, but Kiran, that wasn't the case.
Yeah, not good at all. Nico said we were talking about at halftime. He was 4 for 10 in half number 1. He wasn't much better. He was 2 for 6 in half number 2. That gets you to 6 for 16 for someone that's thought of as one of the best players in the nation at winning faceoffs, and 4 faceoff violations and 6 total wins. That just can't happen.
That really became an issue, and as I mentioned earlier, as you could see with Andrew McKinnon, he really took advantage of winning all of those faceoffs. Take a look at your screen, 10 for 19, but again, what doesn't show up on your screen is how many goals that he scored right off of the faceoff. He took that momentum for the win, and I think when you're playing with these teams that have such strong offenses, you really can't be sitting back on your heels. You need to prepare that, you know, your faceoff guy can end up scoring immediately, and that's what happened multiple times.
It's a great point you bring up, because there were a couple of face-off goals that Princeton had scored right away in that first half, and I think that was a big separation as well as far as the momentum was concerned. And Princeton's defense overall, as a whole, I thought was obviously really strong today. And how much of a factor do you think that played into Syracuse's slow start, despite the fact that they didn't really have many offensive possessions to begin with?
Well, I think offense and defense, of course, go hand in hand. You don't have a lot of offensive possessions because the defense is so good on the other side. 9 caused turnovers from Princeton defensively, and Krodik in net was just outstanding. I think, but Nico sort of talked about it. It goes in hand. Sloppy SU offense goes together with great Princeton defense.
It really does. It was a little bit, frustrating to watch because there would be so many times when it seemed like the ball was just being thrown away. Jake mentioned it earlier when somebody thought that they caught the ball, but they really didn't. And I think part of that was, again, the preparation. Princeton ranks 1st in the Ivy League and 6th in D1 in caused turnovers per game. Syracuse knew this, and still, Syracuse could not prepare well enough because Princeton really took advantage of every turnover, every piece of sloppy play from Syracuse, and it ended up working out for them very, very well. 6-0 by the second quarter, and then the lead just kept extending. Oh my gosh.
Those ground ball battle, they really won it in every single facet of the game, and you mentioned this a couple of times today. It's in the preparation. I think Princeton really prepared a lot better than Syracuse did this week.
I think that's it as well. I mentioned that ground ball battle in my opening thought, and ground balls, to me at least, come down to effort. If you want to fight for that ball, you will. And Princeton really seemed to be doing that. They were going after every possession. Their zone defense was super strong. They were not letting Syracuse in at all. And meanwhile, on the other hand, there were several holes, several times when the ball just went in for Princeton, and we were sitting there watching like, I wonder how that happened. And guess what? It was because Syracuse wasn't playing as tight as Princeton. The lack of effort compared to Princeton was not really equal for me.
It seemed like Princeton won every battle during the game today, the face-offs, the goals, everything you want to bring up. And Syracuse's offense, another thing that couldn't exactly come through time and time again today, especially early on for the Orange. Tigers goaltender Ryan Krodik, though, big reason why he is the player of the game. He was last year's Ivy League goalie of the year, and he was absolutely legit today. 14 saves, 7 goals allowed. That's about a 67% save percentage. And Krodik was all over it today for Princeton. As you can see, not getting fooled by anything that Syracuse was doing. Spallina, we've seen him do that so many times from X, come out and punch it home. And Krodik eliminated a lot of that today for Princeton. So Krodik, again, held the Cuse in check all game long from start to finish, and his best performance of the season, allowing a season-low number of goals for Princeton. All right, we've got a lot more coming up after the break. Syracuse drops their 2nd in a row to Princeton. Don't go anywhere and stick with us on Orange Press Pass.
Here you go.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The crew is on our feet. Nico Horning, Kiran, Costa, and Sydney Chan here in our CitrusTV studios. Syracuse loses to Princeton here today, which might bring up a lot of questions, maybe some panics that Syracuse might have both offensively and defensively. So there's our panic meter right behind us. Of
Beautiful.
course, many options there. Gary Gate right at the center, but he's not really part of the panic today. Who do you guys have as maybe someone that might go a little bit over the edge versus when today started?
Yeah, let's talk about Jimmy McCool. How worried are we about him? I'm going to go with a 2. I'm a little worried. I mean, it can't be all good after that game. And here's why. It's because he was a lot better in the second half. He made 11 saves in half number 2. He really settled himself down. And so that's why I'm only a little bit worried about him. 60% save percentage, he was fine against one of the top offenses in the nation.
Yeah, I think you see, as you mentioned, in the second half, him really finding his groove and really feeling a lot more confident, I guess. In those first few times, he seemed kind of like his head wasn't there. It was very much just Princeton scoring kind of on an empty net, but I think that mainly it was because the defense was just not supporting him. And that's why for me, I'm really not super worried at all about Jimmy McCool. I would go with, honestly, all good. See, Jimmy McCool is really not doing too bad, and I think the reason for that is because it's very easy to look at a score and just put all the blame on the goalie, but we're not doing that here because as we saw, Syracuse's defense was just not in communication. There's really only so much you can do as a goalkeeper when you have so many open shots going at you from 8 yards out. You can't really do anything about that. And Jimmy McCool, he ended up having 17 saves. His career high is 20. So really, without a pretty solid Syracuse defense, I think he did well.
Sydney, I understand that, but you're all good. You're all good with that performance.
Personally,
they lost.
Yeah. I am all good with it, and I think it's because a big reason is because
they
Jimmy
gave up
McCool,
6 goals
Jimmy
in a
McCool
row.
plays off of confidence, and because of that, I think that if I say that he's all good, he's going to take that as some motivation and take that for his next game.
I'll give her that point on that one.
I don't know.
Let's get Jimmy going.
Exactly. You end the point with Kiran agreeing with you, and that means that he's all
Let's
good.
get Jimmy going.
He's all good,
down
everyone.
the stretch here.
Double-digit goals allowed. I don't know. We'll see how that meter kind of fluctuates going forward, especially with a short turnaround on Sunday against Penn. So this leads us into more of a full season comparison and outlook for Syracuse. How worried are we now after Syracuse showed that they can win at home 3-0, their first 2 road games of the year, 0-2 with more road games to play?
Yeah, I'll take the same spot as Kiran from last time. I'm a little bit worried, but I'm not super worried because February is really the time where you take these punches, you work out all of the kinks. I think Syracuse is really going to see a big dependent and a determinant of the rest of their season with these next away games because, again, they're all on the road. This is their longest stretch since 1972 on the road, and I think how they bounce back from this is going to be even more important. We see this in a lot of different cases where they say that champions aren't who actually wins on the game, they are who actually bounces back faster, or, something like that. And Princeton is going to be, or Syracuse rather, is going to be that situation. I'm a little bit worried because, yes, it's 2 games lost in a row, but I'm not super worried.
I mean, as you can see me right there, I'm getting a little bit concerned. Harvard was bad, but this was ugly. I can stomach a 1-goal loss to Harvard. That's on the road. It was a cold environment, a very good team. But this one, you were outmatched the entire game. Giving up the first 6 goals is ridiculous, Sydney, and it never felt like they could claw their way back into it. If we can now look at what's coming up, I mean, we talked about 2 tough losses, and things really aren't getting any easier.
No, things aren't getting any easier. And again, we talked about this in the Around the ACC. Penn ended up losing to North Carolina 11-9 just today as well. I think Penn will be on its redemption arc as well. Of course, Johns Hopkins is a blue blood in lacrosse. But again, I'm not very worried about Syracuse because I think if the Syracuse team is anything, they're gritty. They came so close to championship weekend last year, and they're really going to fight for it to get back there again. That's why I'm not worried.
They have 4 more road games. I'm a little bit worried, and the start of the road trip hasn't been good at all. And here's my biggest worry with this team. Here's the real reason I put them at concern, is because when they went down in games last year, I truly believe they could come back. When they went down 6-0 today, I had no belief that they were going to get themselves back in this game.
Now, I don't really necessarily agree with that because I think that when Syracuse found their momentum, they found it. They got those goals on the man-up opportunities, and that ended up being a good point.
It's pretty easy to find momentum when you're down 6.
Sure, Kiran, sure. Well, one of the momentum switches today leads us to our moment of the game that started off the second half because Syracuse scored right at the end of the first half to make it a little bit closer, and you thought they might have to have a better opportunity going forward, but in the second half, it started off with a Princeton goal. Nate Kabiri right off the bat in the third quarter. That put Princeton up 9-4 and could have been the momentum switch going the rest of the way for the Tigers. All right, we will step aside here for just a couple of minutes and have more when we come back on Orange Press Pass. Don't go anywhere. Wrapping up shop here from our CitrusTV studios.
Well, Thomas, you've got pre-diabetes. But with more exercise and a change in diet, it can be reversed.
I've tried exercising. It just makes me hungry for bacon.
I love bacon, too. And who really likes to exercise?
Not me.
Me neither.
Nobody. So we're good?
What? Oh, you still have pre-diabetes. Big time.
Wrapping up shop here on Orange Press Pass. Nico Horning, Kiran Costa, and Sydney Chan. Happy to be with you as Syracuse drops another game to Princeton, which leads us into some NCAA rankings that might be changed going forward after the way Syracuse played today, but there you have it, the top 10.
Yeah, Syracuse is definitely going to drop with a loss. They went from 1 down to 6. How far do you think they can even slide now, Sydney?
I don't know. That was a pretty big loss, maybe 8 or 9. I think it's so tough because all of these teams are so good that you don't really know what could happen game to game. Again, Maryland losing 2 in a row was kind of shocking, so I think really anything could happen.
All right, well, we'll see how Syracuse fares going the rest of the way, but our analysts right here, Kiran and Sydney, have some reactions based on today's game.
Tough loss, and there's only one reason why. Hey, Joe, where did you go? Joey Spallina held without a point for the first time since 2024, and that was the difference. This isn't a team where the best player can have a down game and they'll be okay, and that was proven today. Joey Spallina, 0 points, 0 assists, 2 shots on goal, and 3 turnovers. That's not going to cut it for the best player in the nation.
Now, we're all from California here, so I feel qualified to say this. This was a little bit too California chill. It didn't feel like the East Coast energy that Syracuse really needed when facing a Princeton team that was out for blood. Like I mentioned earlier, February is a time for teams to get out the kinks, figure things out, but you can't be going into the rest of their road schedule or the rest of their schedule, frankly, in general, with the same laid-back vibe. There's a difference between laid-back and composure, and Syracuse was a little bit too lax today.
I love that. We got 3 Californians on the desk, and Syracuse might have to move a little more East Coast going forward, which is against Penn on Sunday. As far as our next Orange Press Pass, that'll be tomorrow against Wake Forest when Syracuse Hoops plays the Demon Deacs at 5:45.
Yeah, that's a team that needs to win almost as much as this one.
Yeah.
No doubt. So we'll see how Syracuse fares the rest of the way. All right. As far as this Syracuse lacrosse team, we know what they have to do going forward with plenty more road games going forward. And then for Syracuse Hoops against Wake Forest, another team that's kind of right there figuring things out. What do you guys think about tomorrow?
I think Syracuse is really going to need something to go against Wake Forest, and it's tough to tell with this team because against the top teams, they still can't handle, but then with the bottom teams, they seem to play down with them. Wake Forest is a team that just came off of losing by 1 point to Boston College, which is the bottom of the barrel in the ACC as well. If Syracuse can't top Wake Forest, I mean, there's only 3 games left, but Syracuse's schedule is a little done.
Yeah, I think Adrian Autry's team's plumb out of time.
It's coming down to the end of it. We'll see what happens going forward. All right, with Sydney Chan, Kiran, Costa, I'm Nico Horning, wishing you a great rest of your day. Thanks for joining us as always. As Syracuse drops it to Princeton, and they've lost 2 in a row. Join us next time.